Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to part 2 of our live on TTT discussion with the ODPM and the national response to a neighbor in distress, a case study of Trinidad and Tobago's disaster relief assistance to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Joining us on set in studio, we have the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, the Minister of National Security, and he will address us this afternoon. Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very kind introduction, Lieutenant Commander Jean-Baptiste. Thank you very much. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, had it not been for the very dire circumstances that COVID-19 has put upon the world, and had it not been for my knowledge of the circumstances of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the past few months, given that this program is in the context, or being delivered in the context of the observation of Disaster Preparedness Month for Trinidad and Tobago, I would have found myself in celebratory tones. I would have found myself in celebratory tones because I had the opportunity firsthand to see what was Trinidad and Tobago's response to the people of St. Vincent in the circumstances that we are now all familiar with the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano on that island. My colleague Minister Young, sitting in this office, he would have been the one who oversaw the arrangements in support of the people of St. Vincent, and that included mobilizing the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force to participate in that mission to bring relief to the people of St. Vincent. And I take this opportunity to congratulate him and the Prime Minister, the government, for that. In the intervening period, I took the responsibility of national security, and I had the opportunity to see the troops return a few weeks ago safely from that mission. Fortunately, not one of them, though they operated in ash falling and other dangerous circumstances, every one of the 51 of them safely and not afflicted by the COVID-19 virus, nor indeed dengue fever, which I learned later became a threat to persons on that island, even in the midst of the crises that they faced. So I was very, very proud, and I was able on a daily basis, for the time I became Minister of National Security, to have heard from the leaders of the mission there through the Chief of Defense Staff, and I would have understood from those reports on a daily basis what was involved. I take this opportunity to congratulate them. I, of course, take the opportunity to congratulate the ODPM, which was the guiding hand through all of this, as it must be under law, as first responders, so to speak, in any crisis that afflicts Trinidad and Tobago, and as you could see from the the St. Vincent experience, the region. So I take the opportunity to congratulate Major General Smart, who leads this organization. And because of the importance of this organization, we, the government, chose an important and key and experienced public servant, Brigadier Major General Smart, to have led the ODPM, and I must say he did it professionally and admirably. I take the opportunity as well to congratulate members of the business community whose generosity is still manifest as we speak today, since arrangements are still being made to transship some of that generosity, tangible as it now is in containers, as a last stop or another installment to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would have had the opportunity to hear from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines directly and personally. I would have had the opportunity to hear from at least 2 ministers of government there. I would have had the opportunity to hear from our own Dr. Amy Brown, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. And in all of those cases, the people of St. Vincent are reportedly quite happy and very thankful to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for the outreach. The business community rallied in a matter of days in my own constituency, which has deep historical and ancestral roots to the people of St. Vincent, including yours truly. The name Hines came to my mother when she married a Vincentian many years ago, and may both their souls rest in perfect peace. When I reached out as Member of Parliament to the people of Laventille West, I saw little old ladies, ordinary folk, making small contributions. I saw business people who we reached out to making substantial contributions, all in a matter of a few days. And Laventille West contributed substantially to the relief effort in St. Vincent. And I take the opportunity to congratulate my constituency executive and all of the ordinary citizens and the people of Laventille West for your very, very generous and heartfelt expressions to our brothers and sisters in the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, I would, to you members of the public, say that we appreciated it, and we call upon you to maintain your patriotism and maintain your goodwill to all of us in Trinidad and Tobago and all of the people of this one Caribbean. I take the opportunity to thank the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, which represented us on those islands in that crisis, and did so, from all the reports available to me, very professionally, very stoically, and brought pride and joy to each and every one of us. I specifically your homes on a daily basis, but you provided them comfort, you provided them encouragement and support, knowing that they were out there waving for us, holding up the red, white, and the black as they all did. So I would like to thank you all. And again, I wish the ODPM continued growth, continued strength, continued focus on the mandate that is accorded to you. I pray that you continue to serve Trinidad and Tobago and the region in the way that you have demonstrated over recent weeks. Congratulations to the ODPM and Trinidad and Tobago as we recognize Disaster Preparedness Month. Understand that the ODPM is the key national institution to lead and to direct all of our responses in disaster management. I congratulate and I thank you and thank the people of Trinidad and Tobago again. God bless, and may God bless this beautiful nation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for those kind words. I must point that you touched on something people always forget: the families of the men deployed and women that are deployed. It's a different anxiety knowing that you're going away on a course as opposed to going away to respond to a disaster that also has COVID-19 on top of it. So hats off to those families who were patient and tolerant in that time. We also have joining us virtually, we have Dr. Mahindra Ramdeen. He's the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, and he would be bringing us remarks this afternoon on their role as an association as to how they operated to this national response to our neighbor in distress. For those of us who want to leave comments, there's TTT Live online, and a little later on we'll be taking calls at 622-4010. So I now hand you over to Dr. Ramdeen, CEO of the TTMA.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to your audience. Good afternoon, Minister, and every other person on the panel. I'm speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors, the President of the TTMA, and the entire membership and fraternity of the business community of Trinidad and Tobago that belongs to the membership of the TTMA, and to say that we are always ready and willing to assist and engage in corporate social responsibility to help those in need. We have always done this in the past, step up to the plate to provide assistance to those entities, companies, people that have been affected by any kind of natural disaster, and not only on a national level, on a regional level as well to our brothers and sisters. We have done this in the past with Grenada, with Haiti, with other islands in the Caribbean chain. And in this particular regard, it was relatively easy for us to do it because we recognize the synergies with the Caribbean economies doing well. It only has a redounding benefit to all of us who belong to the CARICOM and the Caribbean region. So it was important for us not to see one of our member states, brother or sister state, having to go through this kind of disaster without us in Trinidad and Tobago doing what we can to pledge our support and give generously towards allowing them to recover fully and back on their feet in as quickly a period of time as possible. When the Minister of Trade as well as the Minister of National Security reach out to us, we are already preparing ourselves to engage the process. But we are very thankful to be afforded the opportunity to work with them and work with our sister organizations like the Chamber and the Energy Chamber and SEWA and a number of different organizations who all came together to support this effort. We not only supplied goods and services to the people in St. Vincent, we also provided relief efforts to those soldiers who the Ministry of National Security afforded the opportunity to go there and give of their support to the people of St. Vincent. When they returned home, the business community provided small tokens of appreciation for them to thank them for giving human service, not only to Trinidad and Tobago, but to those in need in St. Vincent. So the business community have done what we could have in that regard, and we will continue to do so. We have also partnered with the ODPM. We have a very good working relationship with them. And I must say, this event has allowed for us to synergize and create greater synergies among the entities in Trinidad and Tobago. The ODPM, the Ministry of National Security, the Business Association, we always have that close-knitted framework in place. But this natural disaster allows us to get closer in terms of the parties that are needed. What we probably need to do is to formalize the process, because there are some takeaways from this exercise that we engage, some challenges, some problems, but there were a lot of winners as well, a lot of things that we did good, but we could also improve on that as we go forward. And what I would like to see, and I don't know if I could make an ask of the Minister of National Security, that when we fully recover from this process, we put some kind of framework, a formalized framework in place. So when any disaster like this happens, we could quickly respond. And I know the ODPM has something in place, a roadmap, a framework, but we need to build upon it. And as I said, limit the little bit of mistakes that were made and build on some of the many successes that were had. So on behalf of my president, the board of directors, the entire TTMA and the business community, I would like to once again express my gratitude for being afforded the opportunity to engage in that process, and to say that we stand ready to continue to assist whenever called upon to help not only Trinidad and Tobago, but all our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramdeen. I know the TTMA and their members did a wonderful job in assisting the members of, or the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I thank you for that. Our third speaker this afternoon, joining us virtually, is Dr. Thackeray Driver. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. And please forgive me if I didn't pronounce that first name entirely correct, sir.
That's fine. Thackeray, but everyone knows me as Dax, D-A-X. That's my nickname that everyone knows me by. So on behalf of the Energy Chamber, I just wanted to say a few words. The first thing is that the Energy Chamber worked in very close connection with the St. Vincent Chamber of Industry and Commerce through something called CARICHAM. This is the Caribbean Chambers Network. So it brings together all the chambers across the entire Caribbean region. And I'm currently the chair of that. I'll be stepping down next month. It's a one-year sort of rotational chair, a bit like with CARICOM. So I'm stepping down next month, but I have the great honor of being the chair of CARICHAM at the moment. So we have a very close relationship, obviously through CARICHAM with all the chambers across the Caribbean. And as soon as we heard about the problems arising in St. Vincent, we were in touch with the CEO of the St. Vincent Chamber of Commerce, and he really guided us about what was needed. The first thing that came up as a big need was water. The ash fall, this volcanic ash, I think when I've seen it online, you sort of hear about ash and think it's just like sort of ash from an ordinary fire, but it's almost like cement dust. So when it gets into a water system, it really clogs everything up. So when they had the first explosion and the ash falls, they had to shut down the water system. Now that meant that they just didn't have water for most of the population, and that was the very urgent, immediate issue. So what we have in Trinidad is a very strong energy service industry, and energy service companies deliver water, large bulk volumes of water, to the offshore oil and gas platforms and the rigs operating offshore. So I immediately thought, well, let's use that strength to be able to deliver water into St. Vincent. So we scrambled quickly, we mobilized some of our member companies. We sent in total 4 platform supply vessels up, filled with water in their tanks under their deck, and they have the ability to pump this water out. So this is what we mobilized very, very quickly. They delivered water into Kingstown. And then the other thing that they did was, one of them in particular stayed around in St. Vincent for around a week. This is the Sentinel, owned by a Trinidadian company called Mid-Atlantic. Very high-spec rescue vessel, which is able to carry about 26,000 gallons of water in its storage tanks under its deck. And that actually, what the vessel did is it took tanks, large water storage tanks, to some of the towns and villages up the coast that had no water for days because the road tanker wagons couldn't get there because of all the ashfall. But they actually managed to deliver onto the jetty on a couple of these towns tanks, and then working in conjunction with the marine pilots in St. Vincent. Then they pumped water out of the platform supply vessels into the tanks, and that gave a vital supply of water. In one case, to a town which had no water at all for 5 days. Because St. Vincent has a good water distribution system, usually people don't have very many personal storage tanks. I won't comment on the Trinidad side of that, but that's just an issue that they faced in St. Vincent. People don't have water storage tanks, so they didn't have supplies of water. So when the water's cut off in the mains, it was an immediate problem for people. So that is what we delivered. We took a lot of other supplies up, bottled water and other emergency response needed supplies, personal protective equipment up on those vessels. Because of COVID, the crews on the vessels had to be very careful about not having any interaction with people on the ground, and we just delivered things off the vessel to people. I think what it showed was the strength of the Trinidad private sector. There's some great videos on the NEMO, the St. Vincent National Emergency Management Organization website, showing what was done with these vessels and how they're able to help. And these are really high spec vessels which we have here in Trinidad, so they really are to supply a good service. So coming out of that, we've had a lot of conversations with SEDEMA, the CARICOM Disaster Emergency Management Agency. Really to think about how does the private sector mobilize to support, and not just in the provision of goods, which we've always done that well, relief items, and the manufacturers in particular have always step up to the plate when that happens, but actually the services that we can supply, logistical services, engineering support services, which we have in an abundance in the private sector in Trinidad, to make those available for the regional response when we do have emergencies. So that's an ongoing dialogue that we have with SEDEMA through the Caribbean Chambers Network. And I think that some good things can come out from that. So just really emphasizing the private sector's ability to not just provide funding support, or not just to provide relief items, bottled water and food and mattresses, all of which we did, and pumps and plumbing supplies, but also to supply services to help in these situations. And that's something I think that we need to deepen those relationships and learn the lessons, so we are well prepared next time, because unfortunately across the region, disasters will continue to happen. But what we can do is be prepared, have the business continuity plans in place from the private sector, and be able to respond quickly. So thank you. I'll hand back over to the host. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Driver. And I want to let our viewers know that we will be taking calls, questions after the next speaker. So the number to call into is 622-4010. And if you don't wish to call, you could send your questions to TTT Live Online and put it in the comment section, where we would seek to answer same. So our next speaker is Ms. Michelle Forbes. She's the director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Ms. Forbes, good afternoon. You may have to unmute your mic, ma'am. We're not hearing us. You may have to unmute her mic. All right. Ms. Forbes, you may have to unmute your mic. We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you. All right, you'll have to unmute. You'll have to unmute your mic. We're not hearing you. All right, so what we'll do is, while we work out those technical difficulties, we will look at taking some questions and or calls, whichever we have available. Our lines open. No? All right, so let us try for our next speaker. In the meantime, who is Squadron Leader Marlon Dorich. He is the Squadron or the Task Force Commander for the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force in St. Vincent. Good afternoon, Marlon. You hearing me?
Good afternoon. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Good afternoon. Testing. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
Yeah, we hear you, Marlon.
Yes, we are.
Right.
Good day, the Honorable Minister Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of National Security, Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopiskun, Minister of Trade and Industry, Major General Rodney Smart, Ms. Michelle Forbes, Director of NEMO, and distinguished panelists, Mr. Moderator, my friend, Lieutenant Commander Kurt Jabatis, members of the viewing and listening public, good afternoon. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the members of the task force that represented Trinidad and Tobago in St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the period of the 13th of April to the 1st of May. This afternoon, it is my distinct pleasure to share with you some insights into the recent task force pre-deployment, deployment, and redeployment for the humanitarian and disaster relief operation to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. During yesterday's insight, the Vice Chief of Defense Staff, Brigadier General Francis, highlighted the factors which address the pre-deployment phase, that is the preparation and planning, to include the legal authority for the operation outside of the jurisdiction. I will now like to address the deployment and redeployment phases which the task force underwent. So for the deployment, I'd like to speak on this. On the morning of Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021, in response to instructions of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Defense Force deployed a joint task force team comprising of 50 soldiers, sailors and airmen, and reservists, led by myself, along with a reconnaissance, surveillance, logistics team of 6 soldiers and 1 sailor. And this team was led by Lieutenant Colonel Joseph McLean, Acting Director of Strategic Logistics to the Defense Force. And we went off to St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the wake of the eruption of La Savère volcano. The mission was to convey relief supplies that were donated by Trinidad and Tobago and the people, to the government and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and to conduct humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations in support of the local designated authorities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It was supposed to be initially 14 days. The task force comprised of a cross-section of skill sets and consisted of engineers, supported signalers, storemen, logisticians, and a small security element. We also had a maritime vessel, TTS Brighton, CG-24, and this asset provided logistic supports to the task force by transporting all equipment and ration supplies from Trinidad and Tobago to be self-sufficient. On arrival at the port of Kingston at approximately 1500 hours on the 13th, Colonel McLean and I myself were greeted by the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Ralph Laval, along with the ministerial representatives, Director of Neighbour, Ms. Forbes, and the Commissioner of Police, Mr. John Collins. The Prime Minister was then welcomed on board the Galleon's Passage and given a tour of the relief items stored on board the vessel for distribution to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Soon after that official greeting, we began offloading operations, and we ended at about 2200 that night to continue at 07 the next morning, simply based on the Port Authority personnel had to go home and take a day's rest, a night's rest and so on. The following day, to get a better appreciation of the situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the RSLT and the task force command group, we met with the director again, Ms. Forbes, and the Commissioner of Police, Mr. John, to determine our roles and responsibilities to identify the area of operation and to effectively bring the country back in a state by providing what we could best do. It must be said, to provide assistance, we had to make sure that we were also secure and ready to provide that in a safe and meaningful manner. With the assistance of the Director of Neighbour and the Commissioner of Police again, the task force was able to establish a forward operating base at the Arnoldville Sporting Complex. And I must give thanks to Ms. Forbes and the Commissioner for assisting us in this manner. We also had our vessel, the TTS Brighton, remain at the Port of Kingston and was used as a reception, staging, onward movement and inception point. That is to say, it collected items from Trinidad and was able to distribute to us, was to remain self-sufficient at the port operating base. At that base, while we were offloading on that day, we established administrative area for command and control, a communication network to make contact with TTS Brighton, our headquarters back at Chaguaramas, and to make sure we kept our communication lines open with the key stakeholders in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. What was critical also at that point was we established a medical area for daily assessments and care, along with other amenities to sustain the task force during the operation. I'd like to touch on the lines of operations and things that we did while in St. Vincent. While it was a challenge during the COVID, we also still had to do a damage assessment to give feedback to the command in Trinidad and Tobago and by extension ODPM. So damage assessment was conducted in the red zone via the sea, and land in order to develop a better picture and provide that feedback. What was keen also was force protection. While operating in out of jurisdiction, we had to ensure that we remain safe. Thankfully, the threat elements or the threat level was extremely low or non-existent to the task force contingent. So we were able to focus our efforts on the aid in the directed areas according to Neighbour. Key and main to our operations daily was the relief distribution. We assisted Neighbour and other NGOs in the form of unpacking containers, vessels at the port of Kingston for distribution to the various shelters. And I must say this required all hands on deck. All hands were made available. Assistance to the CARICOM disaster relief units and the World Food Program team was also provided in the form of construction of 5 mass storage units at the decommissioned E.T. Joshua Airport. At this point, they would distribute and collect and distribute items that came in on the port to ease the congestion at the port. So we helped with that coordination and construction as well. We also did some monitoring and assisting with the distribution of water at the port, as was mentioned earlier. There were also 3 water trucks loaned for distribution from Trinidad and Tobago, and we had to help with the maintenance of that and coordinating and monitoring of that delivery throughout the country. Again, here, Neighbour, deliberate and direct contact with Neighbour made this possible. To bring all things together, we had daily brief. Meetings were held daily at Neighbour Emergency Operations Center with all leading agencies to establish and complete the tasks and to develop operational picture for the following day. One of the concepts of operations that was key and paramount was safety. Safety was of utmost importance. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, PCR tests were administered to all task force personnel before departing to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And upon arrival at St. Vincent, we made sure and employed that all PPE, washing of hands, and daily sanitization of the accommodation, equipment, and vehicles was enforced. This also meant limited movement, unfortunately. So we did not get to enjoy the tourist aspects of what was left there of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Outdoor activity and sporting activities had to be reduced to indoor activities due to the presence of volcanic ash in the area of operation. Also, again, I want to reiterate the low threat level to the contingent of Trinidad and Tobago. We were really welcomed by the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and this allowed us to really remain vigilant at the same time and provide the necessary guidance to the 1 or 2 people that may have want to disrupt the operations. However, it was very limited. So that was the deployment aspect of the task force and the operations we conducted. And then we next had the redeployment stage, which was simply a reverse of what we did to enter into the area of operation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When we were given the directive to return to home, it was a simple matter of preparing all the assets, the material, packing them for shipment back to Trinidad. This also included the psychological preparation of members of the task force and their families. And I'm grateful to the Minister for mentioning that. The families of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and reservists must be commended for their support that they provided, because the men and women had to leave at short notice to see and aid the citizens of the St. Vincent and Grenadines. So after about 19 days, the task force departed St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which was and returned on the 1st of May. And that was only after the second shipment of supplies was offloaded from the MV Galleon's passage. Thank you for this opportunity to have serve and represent the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago during this period of uncertainty. It is important to note that members of the task force worked relentlessly. They are all proud and they feel privileged to have been part of the HADR operations in support of our regional brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you, Squadron Leader Dorich, for that insightful and detailed account of our servicemen in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But before we move on, we want to engage the Honorable Minister Hines in just 4 questions. And the first question is, are our Caribbean neighbors going to coordinate the same way to help Trinidad and Tobago if a disaster happens here? Minister?
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Commander Jean-Baptiste, for that question. It appears to me that, unfortunately, many citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the region, we being part of the regional agency or system that we call CARICOM, the Caribbean community, do not understand the full range and operation of that entity that is CARICOM. So I'm happy that the question came. It gives me an opportunity to remind us that within the mechanisms of CARICOM, there exists the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, or CDEMA, which is specifically designed to respond to emergencies, crises among the states that is CARICOM. It is a regional intergovernmental agency, and its sole purpose, as I said, is to provide support to each other. So that is an established institutional structure that continues to be supported by, financed by all the countries of the region on the basis of our ability so to do, but is undoubtedly for the benefit of us all. And of course, one of the subsets of CDEMA is the Caribbean Disaster Relief Unit, CDRU, which is a military and paramilitary, meaning police, organization of the personnel from the different islands of the region, and that was designed to deal with law and order issues arising out of a crisis or an emergency. So we do have elements of the CDRU organization on the ground in St. Vincent as we speak, even though the men led by Squadron Leader Dorich, that young man, and I listened to him present a while ago and looked on at him with great admiration. People speak adversely about our young people, but here is a young man in a very senior and leadership position who had the opportunity to lead men and women of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force on that exercise in St. Vincent, and I watched on with great admiration and pride and hold him up as an example to other young people in Trinidad and Tobago. But the CDRU consists of police personnel and military personnel throughout the region who would go in support of the country that is experiencing a disaster similar to the likes of which we have recently seen. Now, it is important to note that while we have CDEMA and the CDRU, Trinidad and Tobago, by virtue of our fortunate circumstances, notwithstanding the challenges we face, and by virtue of our close proximity to St. Vincent, we decided on a humanitarian basis, on a voluntary basis, to enter St. Vincent even before the CDEMA was able to flow into full activity and full gear as it eventually did. So we went in first because of our proximity and our capacity so to do through the Defense Force led by the squadron leader who we heard a while ago, and that was our contribution to that disaster relief until, of course, CDEMA got its machinery together and mobilized, and of course the CDRU as well. So the answer to the question is yes, we in CARICOM have these mechanisms in addition to our own voluntary or humanitarian capacities to respond to disaster management and to respond to crises among each other, as we have just seen.
Thank you, Minister Hines. Next question is, what safety measures were used to ensure that those who were deployed were safe from COVID-19?
The fact that they returned unscathed, and the fact that the squadron leader told us a while ago, what's his name, squadron leader? Marlon Dorich. He would have told you that before these men and women left, they were all certified through the PCR test as having been free of COVID. When they went there, they established camp and they kept themselves as far as possible within that kind of bubble. Of course, they had the jobs to do, various things to do, and they did them, but the structure was such that that team from Trinidad and Tobago was self-sufficient with water, with food. They really did not have to interface with the society more than was strictly necessary in their support and to assist them. And then we had the TTS Brighton, one of our Coast Guard managed and owned vessels that was parked up along shore in St. Vincent, and it is from there their daily rations came, food preparation and so on. And as such, we were able to keep them free of the possibility of contamination for COVID-19 and kept them that way safe. The record speaks very loudly for itself. They went there, they performed, and they came back unscathed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Hines. Questions keep rolling in.
And of course, if I may
go ahead.
If you don't mind, sorry about that. And when they came back, all put into a bio bubble in quarantine for the 14 days that was requisite, and it was only thereafter they were allowed, having been tested, to continue to have been free of COVID-19, to assimilate in the rest of the society. Yes. Thank you.
All right, we'll be taking a break at this point in time.
Whether wet or dry season, hazards can strike without warning, causing you or your family to quickly evacuate. You may not have the time to grab the essentials. Be sure to have your grab-and-go bag in easily accessible locations. Here are the top 7 categories that should be included and tailored to your family's need. 1. Non-perishable food items, water and utensils. 2. First aid kit and extra medication. 3. Personalized items. 4. Change of clothing and comfortable footwear. 5. Copies of important documents such as birth papers and certificates. 6. Cash and small bills. And 7. Tools, safety items and equipment. For more information on how to be ready, visit odpm.gov.tt. A message from the ODPM.
and welcome back to our discussion on our preparedness for the St. Vincent and the Grenadines disaster. Our next speaker this afternoon is Mr. Keon White. He's the Relief Officer of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, and he is going to address us this afternoon. Mr. White.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon to the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of National Security, Senator the Honorable Paula Hope-Spoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, Ms. Michelle Forbes, Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, Neighbour St. Vincent, and to other panelists, the moderator, Lieutenant Commander Retired, Colonel Jean-Baptiste. Just allow me a moment on behalf of the ODPM to highlight some of the operational activities undertaken by the ODPM with respect to the St. Vincent and the Grenadine relief efforts. Before I go into the operational aspects, just want to highlight the fact that one of the things that we have done at the ODPM was put a lot of emphasis on situational awareness. What that required was continuous collaboration and communication with agencies such as CDMA, NEMO, US Seismic, which gave us a greater picture sense of what was going on in St. Vincent. So when we had the eruption on April the 9th, after months of monitoring, what would have happened, the then Minister of National Security, Honorable Stuart Young, would have given directives that the ODPM was to lead the national response to the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that we were appointed to coordinate national response. Given that mandate, one of the first objectives of the ODPM was to establish national relief centers throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And within mere hours, by the following day, we were able to set up 16 relief centers. Within the following days, we established an additional 4 collection centers, bringing the total to 19 collection centers, 17 across Trinidad and 2 in Tobago. 1 at each of the 14 municipal corporations at the Ministry of Development and Local Government, 1 at the Foundation for the Enhancement of Life field warehouse located in Fernandez. We also had 1 at the Adventist Development and Relief Agency facility in St. Augustine. We also collaborated with Unicoma and utilized their warehouse facility at Freeport. And TIMA in Tobago had 2 facilities, 1 at the NUOC facility and the disaster relief warehouse at Signal Hill. Important to note was at this time when we set up the collection centers, was the publication of the preliminary needs list, which was developed and published by NEMO through CDMA. At this time, a decision was also taken by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to deploy 50 TTDF and key personnel to support efforts in St. Vincent. And given the urgent need for the items to be dispatched, a decision was taken to utilize the MV Galleon's passage. When the ODPM was instructed and when this information came to us, we would have had to engage agencies such as the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the National Infrastructure Development Corporation, NEDCO, the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad Inter-Island Transportation Company, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and some private sector organizations as well. Important to note, we started loading the MV Galleon's passage on the 12th, which would have been the Monday before the vessel was scheduled to depart. Now, we had a lot of land movement, basically, because we had to move items from the collection centers to the port of Port of Spain. So loading, as I said, commenced on the 12th. And one important thing to note here was the very short turnaround time that we had. We basically had 24 hours to get the items from the collection centers and have the vessel ready for departure on the 13th of April, which would have been the Tuesday. Ground at the ODPM, we had to coordinate with all parties to facilitate the efficient and timely movement of the items, as mentioned before, from the collection points to the port in Port of Spain. We also had to work with TIMA, because TIMA had items in Tobago that they had to transport to Trinidad. So we had to coordinate with the Port Authority as well as TIMA to schedule and coordinate that effort. We did encounter some challenges, which I will discuss later on. But overall, the activities went well. We were able to have the vessel ready for departure within 24 hours, basically. Additional to that, we would have had on the 15th of April, through an MOU that CDMA has with Tropical Shipping, we were able to also send an additional 40-foot container with items with assistance from Rams Logistics. The TTDF provided a lot of logistical support with manpower and operators to operate the equipment. My important thing I want to note here is the collaboration we had with the Energy Chamber, because we were also able to get assistance from the Energy Chamber to transport water using the water barges which they use to support offshore operations. Additional, we had some air movement. The government of Trinidad and Tobago received a request from the government of Barbados, requesting support with the provision of PPE and cleaning supplies to assist in the cleanup efforts at the Grantley Adams Airport as a result of the ashfall from the Lasso volcano. The ODPM, in this instance, collaborated with the Minister of Trade and Industry in sourcing, providing ground support, and preparing the items for shipment. The ODPM also collaborated with the Defense Force to gain both assistance from the regiment as well as the Air Guard to transport the items via air to the Grantley Adams Airport. We also got assistance from the Regional Security Systems, RSS. Important to note that although the Galleon Spashers departed on the 13th, the collection efforts continued. And what this meant is we had a large amount of items that were still at the collection sites in warehouses. So what this meant is that we had to initiate one of our contingency plans and sought assistance from the port of Port of Spain, which we received approval to utilize Shed 3 so that we could store some of the additional items that were left back from the first sailing on the 13th of April. By this time, we would have gotten confirmation that the Galleon Spashers was scheduled to depart again to St. Vincent on the 28th of April. Now, as I mentioned before, there were some challenges, and what would have come out of that was a coordination meeting which was conducted on Monday the 26th between ODPM and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force Logistics Team, which was led by Commander Bosain at the Defense Force headquarters. And what this meeting was basically to discuss was some of the challenges faced following the first sailing. And we basically wanted to have better coordination in regards to the delivery of the items at the port of Port of Spain, and also attempt to mitigate some of the challenges we faced which caused disruptions at the port and basically affected the operations at the port in Port of Spain. As a follow-up to that meeting, we actually had a site visit conducted on that very said day, where we visited Shed 3 and we actually went at the port where the vessel was being loaded, together with the whole logistics team from the Defense Force. So we get a sense of what requirements needed to be put in place, and also in terms of resource allocation and all of that. Following that meeting, actually that site visit on that very said day, we actually decided that we would mobilize, and we actually mobilized equipment on that very said day and started loading the Galleon Spashers on Monday the 26th in the evening. Now what this involved was a lot of land movement from collection centers to transfer the items to Shed 3. We also got assistance from some additional external agencies that we would have been partnering with previously, for instance, Line Transport Group and Rams Logistics, to assist us in getting some of the items from the collection centers to Shed 3. And then the items were ferried from Shed 3 to the port, to the vessel. Internally, ODPM, what we would have had taken place on the ground, we would have had personnel from ODPM liaising with the collection centers, providing assistance with packing lists, ensuring that the packing lists were done properly, and then taking that information now and uploading it into a general database, which was then forwarded to CDIMA and NEMO. Now, one of the things I want to highlight to the public, Trinidad and Tobago, there were some concerns about how detailed we wanted the packing list to be prepared. But I think a lot of persons didn't understand that this information was critical to the operations at NEMO as well as CDIMA. It basically gave them a general sense of what items were coming to the island before the items arrived, and use this information now to make adjustments to the needs list. So that was just one of the concerns that we had from the public in terms of persons not preparing the packing list properly. Internally in ODPM, we also collated information and was compiling shipping documents, coordinating with agencies regarding scheduling of deliveries at the site and liaising directly with CDIMA. The second sailing, to note, one of the takeaways or one of the significant changes was the departure time. The vessel would have departed at 23:30 hours with 335 metric tons of relief and supplies. This night sailing would equate to early morning arrival in St. Vincent, thus allowing for longer daylight operations for the offloading of the vessel. We decided to pursue this avenue based on communications with the CEO at the port in St. Vincent. On the first sailing, what would have happened, the vessel would have arrived in the evening, which meant that offloading the vessel took place in the night. So we took a decision in this instance to have the vessel leave in the night in Trinidad so that it would arrive in the early hours in St. Vincent, which would allow them to have basically the entire day to offload the vessel. Important to note, on the 8th, the Minister of National Security, the current Minister of National Security, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, would have officially closed the operations. Now, it should be noted that while the Minister officially closed the operations, there's still a significant amount of items at the collection sites awaiting dispatch to St. Vincent. So the ODPM is currently in discussions with CDIMA and some of the private sector organizations to ensure that these items would be sent to St. Vincent. As with any operations, there would be some positives as well as negatives. I want to stress on some of the takeaways, some of the things that went well. And one of the things I think that we did really well was the timely establishment of the collection centers. Also the coordination between both public and private sector organizations. And the record time in which we were able to have the vessel ready for departure from Trinidad and Tobago. Not wittingly, obviously, there would have been challenges that we encountered. One of the main challenges that we encountered on the ground at the ODPM was communication. Communication with other government agencies as well as some of the agencies that were delivering items. What would have transpired in some instances was when the word got around that we were loading the vessel, some of the agencies took it upon themselves to then come directly to the port without informing us at the ODPM. What would have transpired from that was that we were not able to schedule these arrivals, which caused massive backlog and traffic at the port in Port of Spain. And ultimately, this resulted in the activities and operations at the port being affected. Another issue we had was delivery schedules. some of the agencies did not stick to the delivery times that they were given, which again also resulted in traffic congestion at the port in Port of Spain. One of the things I want to put particular emphasis on, as I mentioned before, was documentation. When we communicated with some of these agencies, we were very specific in how we wanted the packing list prepared. And there were many instances when the information was very vague, which meant that we had to it took a lot of time because we had to reach back out to these agencies now to confirm some of the items, which caused problems with CDEMA, because CDEMA and NEMA was depending on us to give them accurate information about the items that were coming to St. Vincent. So that was one of the things that we had a challenge with, which we had to work out internally. Another challenge we faced, and the Defense Force could also speak on this, was how some of the pallets were packaged. In some instances, we had to break pallets and repackage and wrap over pallets because of how the items came to the port. One was a safety issue as well. And then there were height requirements with respect to the MV Galleon's passage. Another challenge we faced was also the resource allocation. Because we had so many collection sites, it meant that we had to have equipment and manpower at all the collection sites. So that posed a challenge. It meant we had to have forklifts as well as operators at all the collection sites. We had to collaborate very closely with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force to ensure that we had the necessary resources at these collection sites so that it would not affect the operations. One of the challenges we also faced, and one of the things that we needed to be mindful of as well, was that we were operating in the context of COVID-19. So it meant that, for instance, at some of the collection sites, we were not in a position to have as many persons on the ground as we would have had previously, for instance, when we had the relief efforts for the Bahamas. As well as we had to work around some of the restrictions we had on the port with regards to the time that we were given to conduct activities at the port. So this, we had to be in constant communication with the Port Authority as well as NITCO. Some of the action items coming out of this, moving forward, as mentioned by Sewa Titi, I believe, was the need for the development of MOUs. What this exercise emphasized was that we really need to develop MOUs with some of these private sector organizations, as well as conduct training with regards to preparation of documents, how to pack pallets, how to label them. So these are some of the things that we need to take away from the exercise. So basically that is just a general sense of what would have transpired from the ODPM's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Keon, for that insight into how ODPM operated and how they coordinated with the several centers, etc. Well done. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines for joining us. He has to go. He has to be at another meeting at this time, so I'll just let him wrap up as he's about to leave.
I thank you very much, Lieutenant Commander Jean-Baptiste. I spoke to you today, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, with a sense of pride. There's so much that we complain about in Trinidad and Tobago, so much that we can complain about, but the ODPM, its management, its handling, its direction of what we treated with within recent times, bringing together all the people who you, the citizens, are hearing from today on the last interface with you as we commemorate Disaster Preparedness Month, is for me a source of great pride and encouragement in terms of strengthening our national institutions and having them function effectively when the occasion so arises. As I conclude, I can safely report, based on my interface, as I said earlier, with the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, a couple of his ministers, and my own Foreign Affairs Minister, who has been in touch with them on a regular basis through this matter and since, St. Vincent is a long way away from being back on its feet, but it's a long way away from the disaster that struck on that particular day, in that particular period of the eruptions. They've received a lot of support, as you have heard. Their water systems are improving because on our last interface with them, large amounts of water that we had in mind for them, they have indicated that their water systems have started to operate with efficiency again, and they are in large stock of some of the water and so on that had previously gone. So the people of St. Vincent are resilient people like the people of Trinidad and Tobago, interconnected as we are, and that resilience is being borne out now. So I conclude by, again, expressing my own pride at the work of the ODPM and the foresight of those who gave birth to this organization, and of course birth to the general RSS, the regional support system, through which we have SEDIMA and the CDRU. So I thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Commander Jean-Baptiste, for the opportunity to have interfaced with your listeners today, and I congratulate the ODPM for its very solid work for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the region. Thank you very warmly.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us in studio this afternoon. I know you have a busy schedule, right? And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So at this time, we are going back to Ms. Michelle Forbes, the Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Ms. Forbes.
A pleasant good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Minister, I know he's leaving, Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, other members of the panel from the private sector, Major Dowrish, I'm happy to see you again, and my colleagues at the ODPM in Trinidad. I'm really happy to be here with you this afternoon to really share some of our experience and really the support that we receive from Trinidad and Tobago and the government and people really from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, your support with St. Vincent and the Grenadines did not begin on the night of the explosive eruption. It started long before, and we know we are brothers and sisters here in the region. When Nasafre began its effusive eruption in December, the government of Trinidad and Tobago was directly in contact with my Prime Minister, from Prime Minister, and your Prime Minister being one of the geologists who was on the ground here in 1979, he had quite a bit of intimate knowledge of how volcanoes behave and the situation here in St. Vincent. So he was able to speak to Prime Minister Gonsalves in December, and also through your Ministry of National Security, then which was Honorable Stuart Young, who was able to liaison with the Prime Minister's office and even the Minister of Foreign Affairs and through the ODPM in ensuring that the scientists from the Seismic Research Center were able to come to St. Vincent back and forth over the period of time from the moment the volcano started showing signs of increased activity. And really want to thank the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago for all your support. Now, part of the response to this particular disaster, this eruption, would have done through a lot of bilaterals, government to government, and Trinidad and Tobago indicated from day one that they're ready to support us in the response. Hence, we would have had the dispatch of with Major Dowrish as a task leader coming to St. Vincent a few days after, and was able to bring a good bit of supplies from the private sector and other entities from Trinidad. And it was really useful and helpful to us because one of the speakers mentioned, we actually had to disconnect our water supply for a couple of days because we had ashfall for at least 2 days straight. And everyone in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was affected by this ash. So whether you were displaced from the zones or the communities closest to the volcano, you definitely had the impact of the ash, with the water system being shut down. And the Central Water and Sewage Authority had already indicated to the customers here that this is going to happen once we have any explosive eruption and ashfall. So with the private sector donations, we were able to use the water, especially in emergency shelters. Just think of having over 4,000 persons in emergency shelters and the water is shut down because the tanks will not last very long once you have any other potable water system there. So the bulk water, everything was able to come into good use from the donations from Trinidad. I must say here, this is not the first time that Trinidad and Tobago is assisting the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In particular, in 2010, after Hurricane Thomas, and after the 2013 floods, you were some of the first neighbors, brothers and sisters to support St. Vincent and the Grenadines following the hurricane, following the floods, 2010 and 2013. And you have continued to support through your technical assistance, the technical support, the teams that you have sent to St. Vincent over the years. Now, in terms of the response, I really want to zero in of how we use some of your team members coming to St. Vincent. With Task Force Commander Dowrish and his team, they were able to support, especially in the logistics component, the setting up of the World Food Program tents, mobile storage units at Amesville, at the old decommissioned airport, Titi Joshua. And they were instrumental in supporting the World Food Program in establishing those mobile units, and also the logistics support at the port. And that is really critical because with the amount of relief, number of vessels coming in day-to-day, logistics support and coordination at the port was really, really critical. Because sometimes you have vessels arriving that you don't even know that they're arriving, or you have items arriving that you don't know what is actually on board. And I heard one of my colleagues from ODPM speaking about about what you have on the manifest and what you actually bring to the table for package to in the area of relief, which can pose quite a challenge. So the task force commander and his team, they were able to support in the logistics part of it at the port and generally in the operations at in and around St. Vincent in collaboration with the police from the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines Police Force. Now, the private sector, I must say that we're pleased with the private sector. I'll have some challenges later on. Pleased with the private sector, tremendous support that we have received from the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago, whether it's through their own counterparts here in St. Vincent, may not necessarily be directly to NEMO. It was an excellent effort. And I say that because through this relief effort, based on our needs list, because we would have circulated our needs list. We had a needs list actually since about January. What we know we would need to support a massive operations like this. So ODPM, Major General Smart and his team, they were able to have this needs list was already up front based on the scenario we were looking at. And thanks to the various private sector, you stuck to the needs list. You did not send any unwanted or unsolicited goods, which was really helpful for us so that we didn't have to worry about any extra items that came and we didn't know what to do with them. So really thank you for sticking to that needs list. Now, later on, we would have had several other, after the task force left, we had two vessels coming to St. Vincent, and then we also had the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit team, which is actually on the ground and being headed by a Trinidadian soldier, Colonel Hills. And that particular team has been part of the regional response mechanism, and we must flag some of our institutions and structures in the region that really work through the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. And all the disaster offices and the police departments, the Army, the Defense Force throughout the region that are part of this system, we must commend them for always having the officers and the soldiers ready to support this regional mechanism called the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit. Even though this Trinidad and Tobago is not generally part of the RSS member states, they're definitely part of the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit. And Colonel Hills is leading that team here in St. Vincent, and they have rendered quite a bit of support to St. Vincent through the Emergency Operations Center, day-to-day operations out at the logistics hub, supporting the emergency shelters, delivering of food supplies, and general support in doing some recce's and reconnaissance by land throughout the areas that have been impacted, and their support has really, really been tremendous. So much so that we have asked an extension, and I don't think the government of Trinidad and Tobago have extended that for I think at least 4 of your soldiers to continue until June here with us. So that support is really tremendous, and we cannot really downplay that whole regional response mechanism where we all support each other in times of emergency, and you're able to support St. Vincent and the Grenadines in particular. I want to commend Major General Smart and his team. From day one, they have been in contact with the disaster office, and that's what we do. We speak to each other. We understand our needs. We understand the challenges that we each face, and we're able to understand how to respond and how to coordinate a little better. So what we do not want for ourselves, we do not want to happen to another disaster office, because it becomes extremely busy and can be overwhelming at times when we have emergencies. Now, in some of the challenges we would have had in this particular operation, of course, the COVID-19 challenge. In deploying persons to a country that has been impacted, you always have to look at what is happening in the country in terms of the pandemic. We were a bit worried, yes, with Trinidad. We saw the cases increasing, and we were a bit worried on how would we interact with the troops from those countries, and it was of some concern for us. But of course, we had to have the COVID-19 protocols where the officers had to come with their COVID-19 tests, and we actually ensure that we adhere to some of the COVID-19 protocols, or all of them, whether wearing the mask, the PPEs, and other protocols, because it's important for us. Our health security is still important, even though during the pandemic. One of the challenges that we would have had is that we probably were not informed ahead of time what were the skill sets coming with these teams, so that we might have been able to think of how we utilize them a bit more, in which areas that we could have placed them. So we were not sure of some of the skill sets that were coming. But in the end, Task Force Commander Dorish and his team really fitted in quite nicely, and really was just there to support the national system, because that's how we fit in the region. One of the things we had some challenges. We did not, even though ODPM tried their best to give us the information on what was contained on the ships, we still had some challenges. We did not know quantities. We did not know what was coming. And importantly, we didn't know we thought everything was assigned to Nemo until we got to the ship, when we recognized there were a lot of packages for other entities that we did not know about. And that is one of the challenges we have in relief operations in the region, where we often have to deal with a lot of side packages or personal packages, which really kind of can bog down the system in times of emergencies. And that's something we discuss at the national level and the regional level all the time, because we are faced with these issues. But overall, as I wrap up, the support from the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago has been tremendous. You continue to support us in all areas of operation, from the science, your Seismic Research Center, right down to the actual field operations here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And on behalf of the government and people, I really want to express my thanks to you for all your support during this emergency. It's not over. The volcano is still very much active, still very much busy, even though we have started our cleanup and some persons have started returning home. It's quite a busy time for us here in St. Vincent. So thank you for all your support during this effort.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes, for that insight into NEMO's perspective on this disaster. We want to move over to Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Scoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, for her presentation. Minister Scoon.
Thank you very much. Let me just make sure that you're hearing me.
We are hearing you.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Oh, she can't hear me now.
Oh, thank you so very much. I really salute all those who have gone before me and have spoken. I am sorry I missed most of the presentations. I just listened very intently to the last presenter from St. Vincent. Our hearts and prayers are still with you all. I know that this disaster is not yet over, but you two have done well, and this is judging by the report that you have just given us. So congratulations just on the presentation that you did. I'm very impressed with the work that you all are doing and the way you all have been coordinating in this national disaster. And again, firstly, I must thank the ODPM and in particular Major General Smart for two things: inviting me to speak at this high-level discussion on disaster relief to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and of course for all of the cooperation and the coordination that took place in making sure that we were able to support St. Vincent and the Grenadines as soon as we could have with goods and services. And so this discussion we see as being absolutely necessary, as it allows us to all the agencies to reflect on what transpired and to put into focus with very clear plans on the way forward to ensure that we are best prepared and that all of our relief efforts are fully lined up in the future. And especially now that we're hearing from the TT Met office that we have officially entered the rain season and we know what those rains can bring to us. So I know that you are keen on hearing the involvement of the Ministry of Trade and Industry in the entire relief effort with St. Vincent. And as minister, I can tell you that I provided oversight. I would say that was my role, and ensured that there was ongoing collaboration between ODPM and the private sector of Trinidad and Tobago. I think it may have been on a Friday or by the Friday that we would have realized that the effects of the volcano were extremely serious. And by that evening, I know Minister Young would have been in touch with me. It's a good thing, quite fortuitous that I had been in the ministry at 6-something in that evening, and that all of my colleagues and heads of agencies, that the TTME, Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago, all of them were easily accessible at that hour of the evening, and that I was able to make personal calls to them immediately. Hey guys, we really have to try to begin to coordinate this with ODPM. On instruction of Minister Young and the Honourable Prime Minister. And we followed that very night with sending out formal communication to all of those organizations that I just spoke of, the Bankers Association, the Manufacturers Association, the Chamber, and of course the Energy Chamber as well. And from the very next morning, we would have had thank God for the advancement we have made with technology. And we were able to have these Zoom meetings and the very next morning with all of the heads of chambers, and a committee was established immediately, also included, I forgot their name as well, to name them, sorry, the AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce in Trinidad and Tobago. So the very next morning, all the heads of these institutions were together in a meeting. And certainly you would have heard from Dr. Ramesh Ramdeen from the TTME and Dr. Dax Driver, who were all part of this and were in fact very instrumental in this committee. So immediately they would have all reached out to their membership to align by that time with the list of items that we would have been given through ODPM, but from SEDEMA. So we had a sense of what we were going after in terms of aid. But what took place, as you would imagine, it was on a Saturday and Sunday during a pandemic, so that not all of these manufacturers were in operation. Many decisions could not have been taken. We didn't think so at that time. And what happened is immediately, and I also placed personal calls to the larger organizations, heads of larger organizations, some of them being out of the country. And it's amazing that everyone really pulled together their support, and we would be right away. We saw that, look, we are going to be able to get these essentials out, some of them at least before the weekend, to begin to gather them and certainly get to work. I can tell you that it made me realize how intertwined we are commercially, because you had organizations like Massey who said immediately they wouldn't even have to wait on us. They would start exercising their relief from their position in St. Vincent. Amalgamated Security would have started immediately. Bermuda's Biscuit Company said, we'll just open our warehouse. And that's how it started on the weekend. For instance, the Blue Waters with a factory in St. Lucia, immediately they were able to get out drinking water to St. Vincent very, very quickly because of the proximity between the two islands. So the committee worked very diligently and in close association with the ODPM through Major General Rodney Smart, and also lining up with Mr. Wright and many others working very, very hard. I'll tell you where the trouble came in, and that is with Minister Young deciding, look, we're not going to leave on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. We're going to leave on Wednesday at 6 a.m. So it means that you really just had Monday and Tuesday to pull together all these tons of relief throughout the country. And again, hats off to ODPM for connecting, and then all of these heads of organizations. And I'll tell you, for instance, with the Bankers Association and many other organizations who do not produce items that would have been required for relief, so they're not manufacturing relief items, monetary donations were made, and we were able, without receiving the cash, to match the monetary the donation with the availability of items, because in some cases we couldn't expect that the manufacturer would donate everything that they had. So we were able to match donations and goods, and to ensure that those basic items, water, food, cleaning supplies, mattresses, and cots, whatever we had, that we could get them out. We also listened intently to St. Vincent. Apart from Selima, I would have had a call, for instance, from your minister who has responsibility for foreign affairs, and she would have said to me, look, we need sanitary napkins. And and again, it took the time. We had to put aside the time, call Shine distributors, ensure that we could have loaded up some sanitary napkins. Again, she said to me also, we needed Ventolin inhalers, and right away we were able to speak to Smith Robertson, who said, we will donate 2,000 inhalers, and we made sure that those items got onto the vessel as well. So it was just working, the committee of these remarkable agencies working very diligently, all of our business houses being very, very generous in giving their support to St. Vincent, and that's far removed from the population, and from at every angle of Trinidad and Tobago were supporting St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that we had donated, in the first instance, we had more items than the Galleon's Passage could hold, and the Port of Trinidad and Tobago Port Authority was able to give us the space that was necessary to hold some of the goods as well. And again, Major General Smart would have been instrumental in ensuring all of these ensuring the arrangements took place. And we were asked in the middle of all of that to assist Barbados. They too, shortly after the first sailing, and before I get to Barbados, it would have been that, I must hail him out here, and this is the Energy Chamber head, Dax Driver, for taking on he too had been in communication, not only with Selima, but with also the private sector association there, and would have recognized that potable water was needed, bulk water, and of course he was able to coordinate with all of their energy vessels. This is a tremendous sacrifice by these owners of these vessels to give up their vessels, to pay for the fuel, to pay for the personnel to make these trips, and to make sure, and it required a lot of coordination to ensure that to the northernmost point of St. Vincent, which was most affected. I think those were the kinds of areas and that they were trying to assist in the first instance. And Dax has it covered, and I'm sure he would have explained to you the kind of coordination that he did, and to ensure that we got to make sure that we were able to assist you with the bulk water supplies. And that would have continued, I think, over a period of a week. And then I would say that we had a call to assist Barbados, and that night, it would have been after 8 that night, and again, TTMA, and they would have jumped to our assistance in a matter of 45 minutes. Dr. Ramdi, the CEO at TTMA, was able to say, we have all the goods, we can source the goods. I said, we have money to pay for all that. We're sourcing the funds too. Don't worry, we'll have it ready in the morning. The next day, we were able to coordinate, and that's what is about coordination and generosity in spirit, in time, etc. And it meant that where the ODPM could not pick up all of the goods from the many places to send to Barbados, because you couldn't find 1,500 overalls in one spot. So we were going to the corners of Trinidad to pick up at various spots. Where they couldn't do it, my assistant Victoria was on the phone to private sector to allow us to use their trucks to pick up and so on. And that's the kind of coordination and collaboration and connectivity and camaraderie in doing this, because believe me, we were all on board. And especially these heads of organizations, and Gabriel Faria working from Canada, just amazingly doing what was necessary to rise to the occasion. and so on. And once we realized that there was another season coming on again, ODPM would have liaised with us and, very quickly trying to fulfill the requirements. We got a second list. And again, it took a lot of coordination. You'll be surprised because in the first boat, we would have sent a lot of tanks. But of course, all the connections and so on, and DAX driver would have brought that to our attention. St. Vincent didn't have all those supplies so that we can ensure that all of the tanks could be connected. So we were looking for all of the nuts and bolts, and I'll say that because I too am not familiar with all of these things. We would have been hastily looking, and my assistant calling up everywhere to ensure that it's done and done quickly as well. So it's a huge thank you to the TT Chamber, the AmCham, the Energy Chamber, TTMA, the ODPM, to ensure that St. Vincent and St. Grenadines were satisfied to the best of our ability at this time. And again, a huge thank you to our private sector, showing the solidarity for CARICOM brothers. And again, this brings us back to the point of regionalism. We are all in this together, and it highlights the importance of the region for CARICOM as well, and how we should really be working with each other, very humbly supporting each other in every which way that is possible, and really looking forward to ensure that the workings of CARICOM can really be put on a fast track. We're still a bit behind ensuring the CARICOM single market and economy really works, and to ensure that there's free movement of persons, goods, services, etc. And I think we all have to throw our backs and energies behind the CSME and CARICOM in this entire effort of regionalism. And here we are with St. Vincent donating to us vaccines, and this is what life is about. And St. Vincent, thank you so very much. We really truly appreciate the vaccine donations from you all. Again, I think we were stronger together, and for the brothers and sisters in St. Vincent, we are just continuing to pray with you, and looking forward to your country resuming some amount of normalcy, and of course for some kind of economic recovery, which we're all searching for in the region with this pandemic as well. And thank you. I think I said enough.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That was Paula Gopi-Skun, Minister of Trade and Industry. So joining me on set is Major General Rodney Smart, the Chief Executive Officer of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. Welcome, Major General.
Thank you very much.
I want to hit you with two questions as I have you on board. All right. How effective is our coordination ability if a national disaster happens in Trinidad and Tobago?
Let me say thanks very much for that question, Mr. Moderator. But before I answer, and I know that Minister Gopi-Skun may have to leave, let me say thanks to her for assisting the ODPM with regard to getting all those items to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When Minister Young said to me that we need to get items as quickly as possible to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he said to me, what can the ODPM assist with? So I said to him, well, the usual thing is that we would receive a list, what we call the needs list, critical needs list from SIDIMA. And he also mentioned, okay, once you get that, Minister Gopi-Skun is getting the private sector involved in the process, liaise with her. And I must say to you, Minister, thank you very much, because without that support that you were able to drum up, we would not have been able to move so swiftly, as well as to get the extent of the items that we got. So before you sign off, let me say thank you on behalf of the ODPM, on behalf of all who were involved. Thanks very much for your support. All right, so with regard to the question, just to refresh my memory.
How effective is our coordinating ability if a national disaster happens?
Thanks very much. So after hearing what Minister Gopi-Skun just said, I wonder if there's need to answer that question, because that is exactly what she spoke to. And she underscored the point: coordination, coordination, coordination. This symposium, this 2-day symposium, is being put on to make persons aware of what occurred in our support to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as I said yesterday, in the event something should happen. This same system that you're hearing about you've heard about and you're hearing about now, this same system is what is going to kick in. So I use the term, it will kick in reverse. And we just heard from the minister that St. Vincent and the Grenadines provided to Trinidad and Tobago vaccines. So they are now supporting us, and through bringing it into our system, it is going to be distributed throughout Trinidad and Tobago. That is one small example of what could happen in the event Trinidad and Tobago needs to get support from outside. So to answer the question more directly, very well coordinated, and it is through situations such as what we just supported in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is through these systems that we have established these frameworks that have been, you may have heard me say yesterday, this is what we exercised last year. Learning from what had happened in Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, we looked at where the deficiencies lie and decided we are going to structure Trinidad and Tobago system more rigidly, taking an all-of-society approach. So it is very well coordinated, and I think the minister just underscored it. I also should take the opportunity to say thanks to Ms. Forbes, who spoke about that relationship in the Caribbean. So if it is the support has to come from outside, we are sure that countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be there to support us. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question.
So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and I would invite persons to remember that they can call in. We'll take calls soon after, 622-4010. So our next speaker this afternoon is Mrs. Gemma Malchan Benny. She's the project manager at Is There Not a Cause? Ms. Benny?
Hi, good evening. A special good evening to the Honorable Minister, Paula Gopi-Skone. Special good evening to Major General Smart, Lieutenant Commander Kirk Jean-Baptiste, and the rest of the panel. This evening, it's really an honor to share with the team about ITNAC's involvement and the coordination effort between the ODPM and ITNAC, bringing relief to St. Vincent. For those who don't know, ITNAC it was founded in 2002, and it's an NGO that has been working for the last 19 years, providing relief assistance to those in need. And it's most recently in Dominica, floods in Trinidad, and now in St. Vincent. When we were liaising with our partners in December, finding out what was taking place in the ground, and we were able to send our first shipment in March. But when the volcano erupted in April, immediately our phones started to ring, and we needed to get our supplies to St. Vincent. And it was very late in the night, that I called General Major Smart, and I indicated to him who we were and what that we wanted to send relief items to St. Vincent. And it's at that time, he responded. The collaboration was really, really great. And in no time, I got a phone call from Jonathan, and our relationship began. Because of the collaboration between the ODPM and the crisis that St. Vincent faced, and our collaboration with our partners, the Nazarene Compassionate Ministries in St. Vincent, we were able to send 3 40-foot containers, 10 boatloads of food, water, and other essential, and provision of 25 water tanks. And out of this, we were able to bring relief to 3,000 food packages being distributed, bulk food to 25 shelters, approximately 5,000 cases of water, clothing for all ages, 300 mattresses, sheets, and pillows. And in addition, we are working with the shelters, and when there are requests for meals, we provided meals at least for 10 shelters. 523 families were helped in private homes. We were also able to collaborate with Habitat, where we were able to send 500 hygiene kits from them, in addition to another 1,000 for ATNAC, first aid kits, adult pampers, to name a few items. But one of the things that I really want to talk about is the collaboration with ODPM, making this possible for us, because ITNAC is an organization who doesn't have any funding. It's a very fluid organization, and we do distribution and relief. We respond to relief based on how people respond to us in terms of giving things. And I want to give a special kudos to Keon White for the patience that he would have had with us, because we got the provision to send stuff, but at no time we could have said, okay, Keon, we had 40 pallets or 20 pallets, and that listing that he spoke about, the documentation listing, which posed a challenge to us initially. But I thank him, and I thank Marcel, Dennis Marcel, for really, really being patient with us in terms of giving us the support that was required, that we could have sent all these items to St. Vincent and really meet the needs of the people in St. Vincent. I remember, and I also want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, because in one shipment alone, we sent over 48 pallets of water to the people in St. Vincent for the water that is needed most and important. I didn't understand I couldn't support or understand fully why they wanted to get every minuscule micro details for the water, but understanding the system of what is coming to the island and how it's going to distribute, I had to then pull back and sit down and really do that listing and make sure that they had proper documentation. So Keon, thank you for your patience and your tolerance, and thanks for the team. Another highlight in terms of the coordination with them, there was Sheldon Albert from the TTDF, who really, really gave us good support. And I must want to give this feedback in this forum to see that our guys, people think that our local ODPM and our TT force guys, they don't do anything. But, in St. Vincent, because if you notice, they said that the first shipment, it got there overnight, and then they had problems in terms early in the morning in terms of distribution. And they had two more pallets before their lunch period to be handed over to our partners. And they were so amazed that Sheldon Albert, where they call him Albert was a household name, that he took the forklift for himself and was able to give them those 2 pallets of water, because they themselves, like us, were depending on their community to provide free transportation. So the collaboration has been good. We are still on the ground. And when you have things, we still have things in our storehouse to send off to St. Vincent, and the work continues. So I really want to thank everyone who have supported us, and we are an organization who doesn't have any funding, but we have a lot of support and a lot of respect because of the work that we've done. And we are happy to collaborate in this effort in bringing relief to all those. And I really, really want to thank everyone for us partnering with our Caribbean brothers. We never know what could happen to Trinidad, and because we have sown, I'm confident we're going to receive good support. So I want to thank everyone in this forum, and let's continue to be our brother's keeper, and let's continue to learn from all that we would have gone, all the errors, all the shortfalls that we have learned, so that we can have a proper template in going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benny. Thank you very much. All right, and we look forward to your continued support. So we are coming close to the end of our program this afternoon, and I would invite Major General Smart to give some closing remarks and closing statements, and probably tell us what's next after Hurricane, after the month of May is over, after the preparedness month is over.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Moderator. And for the person who who sent it in, because while the moderator spoke about it, he didn't indicate it was a question that came in from the public. So I'll deal with the question first. What's next? What's next? You've been hearing about the ODPM quite a bit this afternoon and probably yesterday as well. But we are here because of the National Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Committee. This committee has been working behind the scenes tirelessly to ensure that this month we recognize and prepare Trinidad and Tobago for the upcoming Atlantic hurricane season, as well as the rainy season, which you would have heard previously has started. So this committee has been working, and the month, they divided the month into 4 weeks or 4 categories. In week 1, we looked at how do we strengthen the family and individuals. So there were activities planned for the family and individuals. And then in week 2, they structured it in such a way, graduating up to civil society organizations. And just now we would have heard from ITNAC and organizations like ITNAC. How do we make sure and help them prepare themselves for what could come in the upcoming season? So we would have focused our attention on those organizations. And then in week 3, we would have looked at communities. And you would have heard about the community emergency response team training that would have taken place. So strengthening our communities. And in week 4, which is the week we are in now, they said we must put this on. We must look at how did Trinidad and Tobago support St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a case study. To see all these tentacles that came together, that brought this thing like a theater, like a drama, and presented it as a gift from Trinidad and Tobago to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you have heard over the past 2 days how far and varied these tentacles extended. Certainly, when you hear the stories that you heard today, all the way from the very high level down to the community level, the village level, the persons who Mr. David would have said brought 2 tins of something to contribute. And we would have heard from Ms. Benny just now. They don't have any monies, but they are able to excite their network to provide and assist. So therefore, this committee has been working at week 4, and that level at week 4 is what we call the whole of society approach. That in mind, it means that they have taken a very comprehensive approach to Trinidad and to strengthening Trinidad and Tobago and preparing us for the hurricane season and the rainy season. I will pause for a minute because I am seeing Mr. Tilak Singh from Sewa Titi. So I know we had asked him to come online, and I want to say thanks to him. Because we're winding down, we won't be able to get the presentation, but we want to say thanks to him because Sewa Titi has a story to tell, a wonderful story on how they were able as well to contribute. But we are in the closing stage, so let me say thanks very much for joining us. So as I was indicating, in this 4th week, the whole of society approach comes together. And here we're looking at the public and private sector. We're looking at the civil society organizations, Sewa Titi, for example. We're looking at international organizations. and therefore this comprehensive approach. And I therefore want to say thanks to the committee. Though you've been hearing the ODPM name quite a lot, and quite rightly so, I want to say thank you to the committee for bringing this thing together. So what next? The committee work continues. The month is only to bring a heightened sense of awareness to Trinidad and Tobago before the start of the hurricane season. But the work continues in strengthening those 4 sectors or segments that I just spoke about, strengthening Trinidad and Tobago. And yesterday, you would have heard, by strengthening Trinidad and Tobago, because of the critical role that Trinidad and Tobago plays, you would, and just to intimate, Trinidad and Tobago is the lead in CARICOM Southern Sub-Region. So because of this critical role that we play, strengthening Trinidad and Tobago is strengthening the sub-region and strengthening the entire region. So it is so very heartwarming for me to say thank you to the various agencies that would have come together. Over the past 2 days, we would have heard some wonderful testimonies. We would have heard organizations that recognize the need to help brothers and sisters in another country. They would have come together and they would have assisted us tremendously. And consequent to that, the work must also continue within Trinidad and Tobago. So the National Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Committee is now going to go into take a more granular approach with regard to strengthening our sectors. And when we say sectors, we mean, for example, the health sector, taking into consideration what we are going through now with this COVID-19 pandemic. Strengthening the energy sector, strengthening the financial sector, strengthening and bringing resilience and readiness to our banks. The central bank heads a committee, and this is the committee that brings together the banking sector. And therefore, through this approach, we will strengthen our sectors. But it goes further than that. We must continue through the work of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, strengthening our communities. Because while the ODPM operates at the national level, at the local level, we have the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. And they will be taking the opportunity to strengthen our communities. So when we take an approach as what is envisaged, we can see a country that is going to be stronger because we are reaching into all sectors of society, all segments, and to all individuals. And I want to say to everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, we have been spared. We have been fortunate. When you consider the things that have happened in the region, we have been extremely fortunate. I want to say, please let us continue and not become complacent. Let us learn from the experiences of our neighbors and ensure that we prepare Trinidad and Tobago and become more resilient. In closing, I want to say thank you and highlight one or two individuals and organizations for the work over the past 2 days. I'll start with the Prime Minister, the Honorable Kit Rowley, for agreeing to free up his ministers to provide us with the in-depth information about what would have occurred that would have initiated the whole process. I should also say thanks to the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines the Member of Parliament of Laventille, and the Minister of National Security. Today we would have heard from him how his constituents would have come together and how he would have taken over from Minister Stuart Young. And I want to say thank you as well to Minister Stuart Young, who at the time was the Minister of National Security. And even after he left and went to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, he continued to support the movement. Of course, you would have heard the testimony of Senator the Honorable Gopi Skoon. And thank you for rallying the private sector, Minister. To our presenters over the past few days, Brigadier General Dexter Francis, Squadron Leader Marlon Dorich, Mr. Alan Stewart, Mr. Jerry David, Mr. Keon White, Ms. Michelle Forbes, thank you for your presentations. You were able to provide us with that perspective from the national agency's point of view. The University of the West Indies, Dr. Joseph, the director of the UE Seismic Research Center, Dr. Driver from the private sector, as well as Dr. Mahindra Ramdeen, the CEO of the TTMA, civil society organization we would have heard just now from Ms. Marchan Benny. To my moderator, thank you very much. You did a wonderful job today. We must say thanks to this TTT crew for having us in studio and helping us design this program. To the staff of the ODPM, you heard some names called, but behind that there was a whole group of persons supporting this initiative. And thank you for the work that you did for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. To the team that would have put this on, thank you. And most importantly in all of this, thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. You have done a wonderful job. Thank you for supporting us. We look forward to your continued support. Let us get Trinidad and Tobago ready. Let us become more resilient. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have this afternoon. We want to thank the entire viewing public, staff at TTT, the ODPM. Ladies and gentlemen, do have a wonderful and safe afternoon. God bless.